Welcome to today's Explainer. Get ready because we are about to unpack one of the most fascinating cinematic corporate faceplants of the 21st century. We're diving deep into the story of Home Depot's incredibly ambitious and ultimately doomed expansion into the Chinese market. Picture the scene. It's 2006. China's economy is absolutely roaring. We're talking about a housing boom on a scale the world has rarely seen. Millions of people are rapidly moving from rural areas into towering, brand new urban apartments. An emerging middle class is suddenly flush with cash and ready to spend it. Naturally, Home Depot, an absolute titan of retail, sees a golden opportunity here. They've already completely conquered North America, so they figure, their iconic orange aprons and massive warehouses will effortlessly dominate this new frontier too. It's a classic tale of corporate hubris, assuming that what works perfectly in Atlanta is just going to automatically work in Beijing. But as you'll see, within just 6 short years, this seemingly invincible expansion completely unraveled.
$160 million. And get this, that isn't how much they spent to open their doors in China. No, that is the staggering, incredibly painful cost of their exit. In 2012, Home Depot was forced into this abrupt and honestly humiliating retreat, permanently locking the doors on all 7 of their big box retail locations across the country. It sent shockwaves through the entire retail world. I mean, here was a brand synonymous with domestic success, a household staple with world-class supply chains, completely writing off a massive fortune just to stop the bleeding.
So what exactly went wrong? Why did the giant fail? How does the absolute largest home improvement retailer on the planet miscalculate so spectacularly? When you have virtually limitless capital at your disposal, decades of battle-tested retail experience, and a proven playbook, how do you manage to get the fundamentals so entirely wrong? It really begs a much bigger question about the limits of Western corporate arrogance. Because to truly understand this multi-million-dollar disaster, we basically have to throw out the boardroom spreadsheets. We need to look directly at the people, the deep-rooted cultural philosophies, and the stark physical realities of the market they were so desperately trying to capture.
Okay, let's dive right into our business autopsy. Cause of death, number 1, cultural misalignment.
See, before you can sell someone a hammer, you really need to understand why they want to swing it in the first place. And this is where Home Depot experienced a catastrophic disconnect. They brought an intensely American philosophy to a Chinese consumer base that was actually driven by a concept known as DIFM, do it for me, which is, of course, the absolute antithesis of DIY. DIFM is a consumer reality where, rather than spending your precious weekend covered in drywall dust and paint, you just hire professionals to do the heavy lifting for you. Back in 2006, the Chinese housing boom meant millions of people were buying what are known as bare shell apartments. These weren't lived-in homes that just needed a quick weekend coat of paint. They were literal concrete boxes requiring ground-up professional finishing. Consumers weren't looking for a weekend hobby to tinker with. They needed a full-scale end-to-end service. Just think about the profound psychological divide here. In the United States, DIY is practically a national pastime, right? It's an ingrained hobby and, honestly, a bit of a status symbol. Picture the suburban dad proudly showing off a massive wooden deck he built from scratch over a long weekend. People take immense pride in the sweat equity of a project. But in China, during this period of rapid economic mobility, the mindset was completely flipped. Labor was incredibly cheap and readily available. So because it was so affordable to hire a professional crew, doing manual labor yourself wasn't seen as a point of pride at all. In fact, it was viewed as a step backward in social mobility. If you were a young, rising professional in a bustling city, why on earth would you spend your scarce free time doing heavy, low-status manual work when you could easily pay an expert? Home Depot was aggressively selling the pride of a hard day's work to a demographic that viewed that exact work as something you outsource.
Which leads us directly into cause of death number 2, the apartment factor.
This failure wasn't just psychological, though. It was deeply, impossibly physical. Let's look at the stark infrastructural reality of where their potential customers actually lived. The traditional orange box Home Depot model is meticulously engineered for a very specific environment. Sprawling American suburbs, spacious gardens, and most importantly, the 2-car garage. You need serious square footage to store spare lumber, power tools, and heavy landscaping equipment. Now contrast that with the reality for most Chinese urbanites driving this housing boom. They were living in dense, towering high-rise apartments. There are no garages, there are no expansive backyards, there is absolutely zero workshop space. Think about the sheer logistical absurdity of it. Just try to imagine hauling an 8-foot sheet of plywood or a bulky table saw into a crowded elevator, only to store it in a 600 square foot apartment on the 14th floor. It's almost comical, right? The physical products Home Depot specialized in simply did not fit into the physical lives of the consumers they were targeting. And finally, the last nail in the coffin. Cause of death number 3, competition and logistics. It's a really common misconception that when a Western giant fails abroad, it's simply because the market wasn't ready for them yet. But the truth? The Chinese market was incredibly ready. They were just already being served by highly adapted local competitors who actually understood what the consumer wanted and how they wanted to shop. Think about it. Home Depot relies on a very specific, kind of sterile industrial aesthetic. It's all about utility. Forklifts beeping in the aisles, massive concrete floors, towering metal shelves. But local Chinese home improvement retailers offered something entirely different, a vibrant, social, sensory experience. They operated these massive, brightly lit multi-vendor malls. It was a one-stop shop destination. A family could go on a Saturday, drink tea with various contractors, walk through beautifully finished, fully decorated mock apartments, pick out their premium materials, and literally hire the installation crew right there on the spot. These local companies completely outmaneuvered Home Depot by creating an engaging, comprehensive environment that felt like a high-end social outing, rather than a cold concrete storage warehouse. So what do we make of all this? Let's move on to the takeaway, the unportable model. It all boils down to a fundamental truth of this market. Consumers wanted the finished result, not the tools to do it themselves. Home Depot fundamentally misunderstood what they were actually selling. They assumed they were in the business of selling tools, materials, and empowerment. They believed the core desire to build was universal. But the Chinese consumer didn't want a shiny new drill. They wanted a perfectly executed hole in the wall. They wanted the beautiful, pristine new kitchen without a single ounce of the sweat equity required to get it. By focusing entirely on the process rather than the ultimate product, Home Depot completely missed the mark with their target audience. Because at the end of the day, a successful business model isn't always portable. It simply doesn't matter how flawless your operations are, how optimized your supply chain is, or how much market dominance you hold back in North America. Operational perfection in one hemisphere means absolutely nothing if your underlying cultural assumptions are flawed from the start. You cannot just copy and paste a massive, rigid business model across international borders with extreme cultural and structural adaptation. What functions as a huge competitive advantage in one country, like gigantic warehouse inventories tailored for DIYers, can instantly transform into a fatal, bleeding weakness in a country driven by a do-it-for-me culture and high-density urban living. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. Look around at the modern global economy. We are more technologically connected right now than at any other point in human history. And yet, cultural differences remain just as profound and deeply rooted as they were back in 2006. So where else is the copy-paste business model failing right now? What other massive, seemingly invincible brands might be making this exact same $160 million mistake today? Whether it's Silicon Valley tech giants awkwardly trying to force their platforms into India, or massive American fast food chains struggling to decode European dining habits, the hubris of the unadapted model is quite literally everywhere. Keep that in mind the next time you see a global brand announce a massive international expansion. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures behind the businesses we see every day, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.